Hello YouTube, Merry Christmas. I know what you're thinking, these aren't macadamias, and you're right, they're not, they're mangoes. And there seems to be a pretty good crop on my trees. They're doing rather well. I'll sort of zoom back and let you see some of the more broader fruit. I've never really had experience with mangoes except from eating them, and as you know, they come along around Christmas time, and you buy them in cases and they're pretty cheap to buy some of the time. But I've always been told that there's nothing like eating a ripe mango off a tree, because when they pick them for commercial purposes, they tend to pick them green, a bit like this. This looks like a slightly different variety because the mangoes are a bit more elongated. But I've got about 4 or 5 of these trees now with a stack of mangoes on them, and it's quite amazing. Anyway, the fun part of all this is that I'll soon have family descending on the farm and in a position to pick them and eat them for themselves, so that's doing well. Funnily enough, mangoes and macadamias have some similarities because they both like a dry flowering season and a wet fruiting season, except that mangoes, of course, fruit a lot earlier than macadamias, coming on at about Christmas time. Anyway, it's for some reason, they seem to have put up with the drought a lot better, and I don't really get that because mangoes are such a juicy fruit. We'll take a look at them when we start picking them and see if they're all seed and not much flesh. But at the moment, those ones look good, and I have to say I've had the advantage of being able to water them as part of the little fruit orchard I have next to the farm. Now, if you take a look out over the horizon, it's a little bit smoky, and it's still the leftover from the Mount Nardi fires that were happening. They're not causing any danger, but there's backburning going on, and there's smoke around the place. You can't smell it. Makes it a bit hazy though, and it's not the view that you normally enjoy up here. And speaking of views you don't enjoy, on one aspect, this is a video I didn't want to make. The baby trees that I planted in Amy's block haven't done all that well, mostly because of the sheer lack of rain and me not being up here to hand water them enough. Some of the trees, the established trees, are doing great. Have a look at this. This is a nice little bunch of macadamia nuts. They're not super sized, although, you know, there's a problem with the size of nuts owing to the lack of rain, and this is why in general the agronomists are fearing that, you know, you are not going to get much of a crop. But to give you that next to my hand, that's a decent sized nut, and there's some bunches there. I'm starting to think those aren't 246s, because I'm told 246 variety nuts don't do bunches like grapes. They tend to be more singles, and you take this for example, this might be more typical the example of a 246. But yeah, look, the ones I've planted haven't really grown since planting. You can see there's a bit of greener grass around them, which sort of reflects my hand watering, but the poor little fellas haven't done well, and some of them have just outright died on me. You know, you can plant in spring and you would normally expect rainfall to carry them. This year hasn't happened, of course. And while there are some nuts on the established trees, and I think this block, which was almost, according to one agronomist, not going to give any crop this year, is going to give me some nuts. But there, unfortunately, is a casualty of the big dry. I planted about 26 of these trees, and I'll lose probably half of them. That's not a massive loss in the scheme of things. What I really pity is the people who planted thousands of these trees and didn't have much capacity to hand water them, particularly where they're converting some old sugarcane flats to macadamia farms. It's supposed to be okay to plant in spring. My agronomist favours autumn, and now I know why he does. You know, there's just a lot more rain in autumn. Now, speaking of the rain, we have some promised for Christmas, believe it or not, even Christmas Day itself. And that's kind of encouraging. It's a bit of a relief, particularly given that my water tanks in the farm are a little bit low, and we could have some more water for domestic use, and we like to rely on rainwater rather than dam water if we can. One weatherman who I follow on Facebook advanced a theory which I think I believe in, and that is that the Indian monsoons finished 8 weeks late, and because their weather pattern then distributes around our part of the world, we then get 8 weeks delayed weather pattern. Now, I've looked at average rainfall over a long period of time in Rosebank, and the records for the weather station near me go right back to 1957, which is a decent sort of period. Rosebank is one of the highest rainfalls in the state. From that weather station, it gets 1.93 millimetres a year. So, and look, it's a much higher rainfall than even the Alstonville Plateau nearby. If you want to compare the Eureka Plateau and the Alstonville Plateau, one of the advantages of Eureka is that it does get more rain. And the original so-called capital of macadamia is Dunoon, same sort of thing. These hills trap the clouds, they dump their rain, and then they leave. And the disadvantage, of course, is that Alstonville Plateau is a lovely flat place to grow macadamias in an organised way, a little bit more organised than here. However, if we look at October's rainfall and assume that we're starting to get that in December, it kind of works out, because there's a period between about November and April traditionally where you're getting from anything from 150 to 250 millimetres of rain a month, which some people would die for. And yet October is traditionally about 100 mils for the month, and it almost looks like we'll get that. We're in this season that's called Storm Lotto, or the locals call it Storm Lotto, and that is little storms can pop up, can't even forecast them. They just arise from the atmospheric conditions. They dump their rain over a small area. It can be quite intense rain too. It can be hail, and then they go. And last month, the drought broke a little bit. We started getting some rain, but I missed out on the Storm Lotto. Rosebank missed out. We got 16 millimetres, where my mate down in Tregeagle got 50. I would have loved 50. Then, a couple of weeks later, we got another 16 millimetres here in Rosebank, and the Alstonville Plateau got nothing. So there's your lotto. Fortunately, it seems everyone's going to try and get a bit of rain for Christmas. There's about 3 or 4 days of it forecast, and it's just a matter of how heavy it is. But if this theory proves right, and that we're looking at an 8-week delayed weather pattern, at least for the northern rivers, then I think there is some hope for more regular rain come January. The experts are all saying it's more like February that we're going to get it, with the Indian Ocean dipole being what it is. I suppose from the view you're seeing, it doesn't look awfully drought-stricken, but given how green the place normally is, when it's lovely and lush, it actually is a pretty big difference. So anyway, wherever you are for Christmas, I hope you have a happy and safe one. I'll be up here some of January, and I'll probably do a video or two more then to show you what's going on, particularly as the nuts approach that critical pre-harvest season. That's going to get exciting. We'll get a little bit more idea of just how much I can expect from the trees. Meanwhile, there'll probably be a mango to munch on while we do it. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you soon.